Most people, when they imagine surviving the Middle Ages, are afraid of the wrong thing. It's 4 in the afternoon and the sun is already gone. You wake up on a packed dirt floor under a scratchy wool blanket, and you can see your own breath, indoors, one room, one fire, 8 strangers. Outside that door it's January 1323, and spring is 5 months away. No electricity, no antibiotics, no supermarket. Now everyone assumes the cold is what kills you here, but look at who actually died in medieval winters, and the cold isn't even in the top 3. The real killers are quieter, stranger, and much harder to fight, and the most dangerous one is already in the room with you, right now. You have 5 months. Could you make it to spring? Okay, back to that freezing room and back to that ranking. If the cold isn't in the top 3, what is? By the end of this video, you'll have all 3, and you'll know exactly which one is breathing right next to you. But first we have to deal with the cold, because everything you think you know about it is backwards. Medieval villagers were not dropping dead of frostbite every January. That's the movie version. The real story is weirder. The deadliest thing about a medieval fire wasn't it going out, it was it staying lit. Real villagers wore some of the best cold weather technology of the pre-modern world. A linen layer against the skin, then wool, then more wool, and wool keeps insulating even when it's damp. Their houses were wattle and daub under thatch, and a foot of packed straw is genuinely decent insulation. Add a central fire and a few animals radiating body heat in the corner, and you get a space that's dim, crowded, and survivable. Quick question though, how warm do you think it actually got in there at night? On a hard freeze, at the edges of that room barely above 0. Remember seeing your breath when you woke up? That wasn't a bad night. That was a normal one. And notice I said the fire was the dangerous part. Most ordinary homes had no chimney, just a hearth in the middle of the floor and a hole in the roof. You'd spend 5 months marinating in wood smoke. Archaeologists studying medieval skeletons keep finding the evidence baked into the bone itself. Chronic sinus infections, skeleton after skeleton, from a lifetime of breathing indoor smoke. The real cold problem isn't temperature, it's fuel. The fire can never die, which means someone is feeding it constantly, all winter. And you can't just take wood. The forest belongs to the Lord. Peasants had customary rights to gather dead wood, whatever they could pull down with a shepherd's crook or a billhook, which, by the way, is very likely where we get the phrase by hook or by crook, so the cold, miserable, but manageable. A comfort problem. Food is a math problem, and the math is brutal. Here's something that changes how you see the entire medieval winter. Everything you'll eat between November and May was decided back in autumn. Around Martinmas, November 11th, villages held the Great Slaughter. Any animal that couldn't be fed through winter was killed, and the meat salted, smoked, or dried. Salt wasn't cheap. Preserving your pig was a real investment. From that point on, winter is pure accounting. The grain in the storehouse, the salted meat, the peas in the loft, that's the whole budget. Every day the ledger goes down, and nothing comes in. Daily reality was a pot of pottage, oats, peas, onions, simmering more or less forever, plus dark bread and weak ale. Sounds almost cozy? Okay, do the math with me. A working adult in that world burned somewhere around 3,000 calories a day. That pot has to produce that every day for 150 days out of a storehouse that was measured and counted back in October. And here's the part that should genuinely scare you. That October count was made for the people who were already there. Nobody counted you. And what happens when the math fails? We know, because it happened. In 1315, the rains came in summer and didn't stop, and the harvest rotted in the fields. Then it happened again the next year. The result was the Great Famine, and something like 1 in 10 people in Northern Europe died. And listen, those were people who belonged: fields, families, storehouses, neighbors. Now you might be thinking, fine, I'll hunt, I'll fish, I've seen the videos. Look, the deer belong to the Lord, and poaching could cost you a hand. But here's the deeper problem. Actual peasants, people with lifetimes of local knowledge, did not feed themselves through winter by hunting, because it doesn't work. If bushcraft could carry a person through February, the Great Famine wouldn't have a name. Your survival isn't hiding in the forest, it's somewhere much stranger. Here's what most people don't realize about the Middle Ages. Survival was not a skill, it was a membership. Every calorie, every stick of firewood, every act of charity flowed through a web of belonging. Your manor, your parish, your kin. Gleaning leftover grain from the fields, for members. Gathering wood, members. Help from the parish when you're starving, members. Medieval society was less a landscape you survive, and more a club you have to be inside of. And you are a stranger with no lord, no family, and no letter from anyone. You're not a guest. You're a question mark. Maybe a runaway serf. Maybe a thief. And here's how seriously they took that. Under Old English custom, a household that sheltered a stranger beyond about 3 nights became answerable for him for anything he did. Taking you in wasn't just kindness. It was a legal risk. Think about waking up tomorrow in a foreign country with no passport, no phone, no bank account, except medieval identification isn't a document. It's people. You are whoever vouches for you. Nobody vouches for you, you're nobody. So the real survival challenge is not build a shelter. It's this: get adopted within about 48 hours. The good news, there was a front door, and it was the church. Monasteries operated under a rule commanding them to receive every guest as if he were Christ himself. A monastery guest house could mean days of food and a roof, no questions asked. That's your move. Then you make yourself worth the risk. And you have real assets. You read, write, and do arithmetic in a village where almost nobody can. That makes you useful to a priest or a manor steward within a week. And, weirdly, your teeth. Straight, white, complete, plus your height and your soft hands. You might get read as someone well-born who fell on hard times. In a world that judges bodies, that's genuine leverage. Okay, say it works. A family takes you in. Fire, pottage, a corner to sleep in. This is where it gets really interesting, because now we finally meet the killer from the very first scene, the one that was already in the room. Warmth in a medieval winter means bodies. Shared rooms, shared beds, shared air, all season long. And everything keeping you warm is also a transmission system. Dysentery, they called it the flux. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, winter fevers moving from bed to bed. Your immune system has never met the local strains of any of it. And here's the flip side that genuinely keeps me up at night. They've never met yours either. You could be carrying pathogens their bodies have no defense against. You're worried about surviving the village. There's a real scenario where the village has to survive you. Quick myth detour. You've probably heard medieval people drank beer because the water would kill you. Not really true, and they drank water constantly. Ale was calories and flavor, not a survival hack. The danger was never water as a category. It was this well sitting next to that latrine. Which brings us to your one true superpower, not technology, knowledge. You are the only person on the continent who knows why people get sick. And germ theory costs nothing to use. Boil your water, wash your hands, keep waste away from the well, sleep facing away from whoever's coughing. It won't make you immune. But in a world where disease is God's punishment or bad air, You're the only player who knows the actual rules of the game. Now, for the opponent, nobody puts in the movies. It has no teeth, it carries no fever, and it arrives every single day at 4 in the afternoon. 16 hours of darkness. Here's a question I want you to actually sit with. When was the last time you spent one evening, just one, with no screen, no book, no light except a fire? Now do 150 of them in a row. Because light was wealth. Beeswax candles were for churches and lords. Tallow smoked, stank, and burned the very fat you'd rather eat. Rushlights lasted minutes. For you? The fire. That's it. So what happens to a modern mind in that much dark? Medieval people had an answer, and it's one of the strangest facts in all of history. They slept twice. A first sleep, after dark, then waking around midnight for an hour or two to pray, talk, mend clothes, make babies, then a second sleep until dawn. The historian Roger E. Kirch found this pattern all across pre-industrial records. It seems to be what human sleep does when you remove artificial light. Give it a few weeks and your body would likely rediscover it too. And then there's the medieval answer to seasonal despair, the feast calendar. Not superstition, morale engineering. 12 full days of Christmas where work stopped and the Lord fed his tenants. Candlemas in February. Saints' days scattered through the dark, like stepping stones across a river. Honestly, medieval winter had better psychological pacing than your streaming queue. But for you, the modern person, the real shock isn't losing comfort. It's losing privacy. You will not be alone for 5 months, not for 1 hour, shared room, shared bed, shared everything. And here's the twist. That suffocating closeness is exactly what kept human minds intact through months of darkness. The village understood something we've forgotten. You don't endure winter as an individual. In winter, there is no individual, so could you survive one winter in the Middle Ages? Honest answer. It comes down almost entirely to 1 week. Your first. Stay alone outside in January in days. Exposure and hunger don't negotiate. But if in those first days you reach a monastery or get taken in by a household, if you work, keep your head down, stay away from bad water, and your luck holds against the fevers, then yes, your odds are genuinely decent. And now I can finally pay off the ranking from the beginning. In an ordinary medieval winter, the killers came roughly in this order: infection first, hunger second, and only then, far behind, the cold. Your list of fears turned exactly upside down. The most dangerous thing was never the wolf at the door. It was the cough in the bed next to yours. You'd survived not because you're tough, but because an average medieval winter was designed to be survived. That's the real revelation. Millions made it through every single year. Children, grandmothers, everyone. Winter wasn't an extreme event. It was a solved problem. It's just that it was solved socially, by the group, never by the individual. And your modern knowledge? Mostly trivia without infrastructure. Knowing antibiotics exist doesn't help you make one. What actually transfers is smaller and stranger. Hygiene discipline, literacy, arithmetic, and the understanding that your single most valuable resource is other people's goodwill. Here's the thing about the question itself. Could you survive smuggles in a very modern assumption that survival is a solo stat, like a character sheet in a video game? A medieval person wouldn't even understand the question. Winter was survived together, or it wasn't survived at all. And we never actually escaped that. We just made the web invisible. The pipes under your street, the power grid, the trucks restocking shelves at 3 a.m., you already survive every winter the medieval way, carried by a village. You just can't see yours. A peasant in 1323 could name every single person keeping them alive through the dark. Could you?